Tiny storms. You reached for the secret too soon. 1847-44, Marfa, Texas. 05-10-2014. There will be blood.
2007.
Keeps coming to mind. No Country for Old Men.
2007.
Also haunts this associative periphery, though giant.
1956.
Barely resonates despite the fact that it was that cast and crew, including James Dean, that came to occupy Marfa's Hotel Paisano. Pictures of everyone from George Stevens to Rock Hudson and even a young Dennis Hopper find a place somewhere between the polished Saltillo tile underfoot and the exposed beams overhead. Elizabeth Taylor's suite is 212. 223 is James Dean's room. Even Rebel Without a Cause
1955.
would make more sense. Cass has on her red motorcycle jacket too, but it's the wrong red. Cass can only see Daniel Plainview beating to death Eli Sunday with a bowling pin. This hall reminds her of that downstairs alley. Only here, the gutters are locked rooms. Past those doors, the manager now hurries, keys already out. They had arrived an hour ago, but their call from the lobby had gone unanswered. Deacon is at the bar, Bobby had snipped, helping Cass to the lobby sofa. But he did not return with news of drinks ordered and a table held. Bobby was gone much longer the second time. Nervousness and doubt began to tighten in on her, like thoracic pain spreading into ribs and guts. Cass had just resolved to risk the walk when Bobby returned again. I rechecked Jet's grill. No one there. And no one remembers seeing Deacon. Bobby tugged on his bolo tie, a black scorpion encased in leucite resin, flakes of gold floating around stinger and claws. He has never worn it for her. No question it's for Deacon. The button-down shirt, too. Shall we go? Cass had no intention on leaving, but she wanted to know where Bobby stood. There's a reception at the gallery on the corner. Our kind of place. Free glasses of wine. Unlike the restaurant, it's packed. On any other night, I'd say you should check it out. Bobby finally left the bolo alone. Walked through twice, and then circled the block. No sign of him. Bobby tried to look annoyed, but Cass could feel the tremors of uncertainty. More than uncertainty. She stood up then. He needed her to stand. Even if her legs still ached from the walk they'd finally taken in the rain. More than her legs, her entire body felt disjointed, beyond reason. Not that today's exertions had proved particularly bad. She'd had worse. Her body was merely registering the toxicity of information. Even the back of her hands seemed to bite. Like jellyfish kissing nematocysts through the skin. Merely images applied to events occurring far from Marfa, or Texas for that matter. The same as her desire earlier in the day to picture information networks as a vast sea, either nurturing or corrosive. Only a metaphor, like the jellyfish and their stingers too. And kisses? Why were her thoughts so oceanic these days? Still, Cass had scratched the back of her hand, picking at the words under her skin. At the check-in counter, encased in sawtooth tiles, opposite a large buffalo head, mounted on the wall, the same receptionist who had helped them before helped them again, without a hint of irritation, too. Adriana dialed the room number while either sucking on or blowing away the long hair idling around her face. Glassy and young, Cass taken in by the full lips, either kissing or nibbling herself, with those eager brown eyes somehow making Cass think of Penelope Cruz, only in a world where movie stars never lived on screen but still lived out their impossible stories with impossible charm and vitality. In fact, while they waited for Deacon to pick up, Adriana smiled at Cass in such a way that Cass half wanted to ask her for an autograph. Instead, she asked if Adriana spoke Spanish. She did not. He's diabetic, Bobby had suddenly lied when Adriana cradled the receiver. "Will you take us to his room? We're going to make sure he's okay." Cass couldn't fault her. Penelope would have done the same thing. Adriana called the manager instead and apologized when her supervisor did not materialize at once. While they waited, Bobby described the exhibit next door, black and white photographs depicting derelict television sets. The artist's name is Filial Krebs. The program describes her as the Diane Arbus of blind technology, something like that. Cass twinged at the thought of pictures of her orb, as if that might make it too exposed, or worse, describe a shattered future, even though it was presently safe and sound back in the airstream, comfy in its sweater, hidden beneath those pillows, making up the lounge bench. In fact, hidden within a whole hollow, beneath the pillows of that bench. Cass still found it difficult to suppress an imperative to return at once. Like it was a sightless thing that depended upon her, not only to see but to reckon how that seeing implicated itself in the project of life. Kirby, the night manager, had taken his time. Apparently, along with everyone else in town, he too was at the Greasewood, where images of all those broken tubes had got him to thinking how, when I was little, I thought folks like Cossel and Muhammad Ali, Frazier, and Foreman lived in there. Now I can see they was always gone. Or just moved on, which had earned Cass a smile that winked about as brightly as the brass buckle of a Bronco, the truck polished to a dark rose. His hat he held in his right hand. His left hand he kept hooked in a loop of Levi's worn high over his hips, stiff as blue cardboard and about as new as he was not. Kirby was still younger than Cass and Bobby, but not by much. And when he finally got around to hearing their predicament, Cass expected a drawn-out refusal. She was wrong. He took the situation very seriously, and within moments they were following him out of the lobby. Bobby had to help Cass manage the steps, but Kirby made no comment. He put his hat on. His eyes did not stray to the braces. Now reaching Deacon's room, Kirby knocks hard. He declares he is the evening manager. He makes a general inquiry about the well-being of the occupant. He knocks again. Throughout, his left hand stays snug in that belt loop. A stroke? Here is more than a posture. Here is yet another shape, lasting takes. Suddenly, Cass is afraid for Kirby. Even Daniel Plainview's bowling alley would be safer than here. And though the lights in that long, empty hall remain steady, something about the three of them clustering around that door seems to rob the scene of visibility. Then, that feeling she sometimes gets in her knees and behind her shoulder blades, the one curled up inside each of her joints, begins to seethe with premonition. Cass lays her hand on Kirby's back to stop him, but it's already too late. He's already turned the key. He's already stepping back, smoke pouring out. Even though the orb is strictly digital, with projections calibrated and angled to conform to the properties of the lens, refractive index lower than 2, with a curious coma in this latest version, Cass occasionally calls it a crystal. Technically it is, but nothing like quartz, near transparent diaphaneity, concordial fracturing, if it were to break. Not that she has ever seen one crack, and Cass has had hers for 16 years. She even named it Scry Baby. Scry Baby Scry, she sometimes sings to a Beatles tune, while gazing into what chatoyancy such darkness enfolds. And that's before even turning it on, before her fingers dance the surface, open the locks, combine threads of light into something Cass swears sometimes feels dangerously awake, even if to a casual viewer, even one seated on her shoulder, the orb would hold nothing more substantial than faint flickers resembling smoke. At first, VEM, redacted. 2, redacted. Mars, neither temple nor canal nor marble of Nemesis, never a sign or promise of civilizations past. Here, just dust to spin a silence in the afternoon air. For now, sky a haze. For now, until high in it a glitter of pink, one long reach blinking into view. Alien, invader, red in claw, with one familiar sun to set fire to its fall. 22.697 north, 48.222 west. To the sands of Chrysae Planitia. July 20th, 1976. Viking 1 descends. Or redacted. Night before the third day. The heart quickens. Union blue, long rows of tents in a dark as lantern bit as men are by mosquitoes. On both sides, they sleep or rattle, pans sweet with fat molasses. Whittle sticks, clean and re-clean their cannons, write letters to wives, children, to men loved in secret but at this hour sprung loose in ink. Some sing. Quickens at such. Cemetery ridge. One captain walks the camp, cowled in dark wool to hide his face and bars. Lips mumble, stop, start again, starting to work something out. Seminary ridge. Where picket waits. The heart quickens at such a message. Or even redacted. Two ancestors in a cave, by a fire, breaking rocks, finding the colors within to paint their faces, until the fire died and smoke filled the cave and took 2 children away. Or this infamous clip number 1, redacted. Audra, Tolland's daughter, his willow ruse, here beneath the Pacific, drowning over with, just 1962. 16 years now just under. Reversed, rising for her last breath, breaking the surface. A first breath for never seeing them, speaking anyone's name, their faces. Those who could never put her here, or film her going down. Or even redacted. Boy, bright, eager, even on his back, reaching for stars hung bright and painted, above bright eager boy's crib. Wichita winter light bars the child. Minutes pass, bars of shadows shift, without maternal or paternal shadow to rearrange or lift. Too long? Alvin, Alex, Anderson, neither cries nor smiles. Just that feeble reach, like a persistent twitch. Even here, wide, beautiful eyes fixed on a universe beyond a cage. Even these excavations remain fragmentary. To expand beyond such fleeting whirls of digital smoke remains too costly despite whatever morning premonitions the thunder demanded. Besides, though her joints may have buzzed with enough fear, even her braces seemed electrified. What was really learned? Did the amplitude of such a feeling really authorize a worthy action? Especially since such an imperative so often gets the future wrong. More than once, Cass has taken to task political advocates whose arguments finally rest on the fervor of their pronouncements. They're the kind of individuals whose feelings are poorly aligned with reason. In essence, they're lazy. They rely on inherited emotional systemics because they have failed to do the work necessary to update such affect-derived responses. An accusation Cass takes seriously enough to apply to herself. Fear and pain can sometimes be just fear, then pain, locally derived and immediate. After all, how often does what her compromised body portends prove no more than what any such body, elastic beyond nightmares, already knows about its own questionable future? As noon would prove, anxiety was once again wrong. Lightning never kissed their array of antennas. Nothing was fused or ashed to the ground, except for a rattling on the Airstream's rooftop when the rain sounded hard and hail. Little else of the storm altered the pursuits. As had been the case for a while now, the orb itself remained the only major limit, even with self-preservation at stake. And it had come a long way since the late 50s and 60s. Cass still cringes at the thought of some of their early attempts to demonstrate the work. Back then, a 2-inch Ampex quad did what it could. At least by 1963, Redacted had figured out how to get some of the findings on film. Unfortunately, most viewers regarded the evidence as some kind of avant-garde animation. It didn't help that none of the splices were authenticated. Then came the 1964 discovery, or what would eventually become known as the infamous Clip Number 1. Cass was the one who found her too, not amid some dense population, historically cross-referenced, as the dark clips at first always appeared to guarantee, even as each and every one slipped back into the all-too-common zone of the unconfirmed. Audra was not on a crowded beach, but beyond the breakers, and not even on the surface. A corpse suspended in the lolling rock of distant swells, nor was it by chance, either. Cass never goes fishing. She had followed the slants of light, slopes of shifting colors, instincts leading through the feed static to behold that horror. Not that Cass, or Sorcerer, Forget Recluse, or even Redacted, really understood the consequences then of what had just happened. The language of the window had not yet formed. In those years, they were still out in the open, or trying to be. Bobby and others began building these things out of old television sets, later experimenting with electron guns, dazzling up other mediums. The units took up rooms, entire homes, came in boxes and as screens, crates, cabled and cooled until they overheated and burned. Part of the smoke Cass still sees in Scrybaby is no doubt a projection, knowledge mingling with memories of those actual fires. Maybe even the smell, too. Twice Bobby had to carry her out of a room on fire. He always managed to put the fires out, but they always lost the homes. The year of cocaine didn't help. Then there was a 2-month experiment with meth, long before Walter White, and always the drink. Human history is shaped by drink. Human history, for all it aspires to reach, always needs a way to come down. Those days were as great as they were lost. Still, as scientists in a field dependent on processing power, they were fortunate to live in a time when technological advancements kept pace with their discovery. And so as Kips jumped to MIPS, the fire stopped. Cords went wireless, and Bobby came up with the orb, even if it still looked like a parlor trick. Only a few years ago, before she, Bobby, and Sorcerer had conceived of this distribution, Cass was still trawling around that red wood box. Brass latched and felt lined. Violet, of course, into university labs, onto multi-billion-dollar campuses. No doubt she had resembled some Wicca practitioner or Ren Fair devotee, and Cass had been both. Something had to follow the drug, something still has to answer the pain. Regrettably, the proofs are still long, the conclusions far too loopy for most to consider, let alone believe. Cass had stopped mentioning them years ago. When the orb worked, the usual response was fraud, or, put more politely, fiction. When it didn't work, it was almost better. Jaron Lanier had seemed the most keen to believe her. He'd also waited the longest until it became painfully clear that glass would reveal nothing more than what anyone can coax an average computer to display. Recorded clips are easy, but substantiate nothing. The performative is a whole other story, often an unintelligible one. What was she to make out of prehistorical children playing with embers? Ruse or rue? How many days and hours had it taken just to hear message instead of the heart quickens at such a massage? At least Cass could smirk. Was Scrybaby telling her she needed a massage? Bobby does so many things well, but his greatest talent may be his massages. Not that they've had time for one. Her most recent unratified clip, likely offering a glimpse of their pursuer in a wide and dispiritingly high crib, didn't incline him to apply his fingertips to her shoulders. These days, Bobby implores her to do just one thing: find Recluse. Or as he puts it, scry the surface and max the window. Bobby's right. They are on the run and running out of time. They do not have the luxury to dabble endlessly with alternative perspectives or historical whims. Cass, however, can't help herself. If their days of ecognine and amphetamines had been bad, they were nothing compared to this. No one is immune to the transformative powers of VEM. And then Bobby dropped the cashmere sweater over the orb and told her to power down. Cops at the door. Whatever afternote of ionic singe continued its confession to the still airstream air, nothing could compare to the discharge of her own terrified static. If only they were cops. Cass had immediately lit incense and doused the lounge cushions with patchouli oil. Forced herself to giggle. Play the kook, be only a kook. None of which would make the slightest difference if these inquisitors proved something more than cops. Federal agents, for example, or servants of agencies neither she nor Bobby had ever heard of, with badges and firearms. The cops, too, could prove servants to warrants issued by distant judges, powerful enough to seize and silence them both. Was this it, then? Already the end? And why wouldn't it be? Not the first time power would triumph over objection. Why should Cass and Bobby consider themselves different? Their distribution would be known only as the failed distribution. Recluse's VEM identity would triumph, instituting a culture of sustained suppression, lasting potentially centuries, if not longer. The Dark Ages, if only. Whether a sign or not, by then the rain had stopped. Pie time. Ever since confirming clip number 6, Cass has always regarded 3:14 p.m. with a potency it likely does not deserve. No help that a mist had started to creep in with more storm circling above. No cops encircled their airstream, just one patrol truck pulled up close to their awning and lawn chairs. No lights on top either. One Presidio County Sheriff badge was enough. The owner who had rented Bobby the property was there too. Likely, he was the problem. Mifflet Shimworth, round on corn and drink, stayed nervously off to one side. There had been suspicions, he immediately rasped, from people in town, driving by. What with these generators outside, and since he was the one vouching for them, me renting you this spot, and given the power too, which, see, makes the need for these generators a little more unclear, I figured I'd nip quick in the bud all this ballyhoo, rumoring just to come here with Sheriff Dominguez, a friend of mine too, as you can see, so to witness and confirm that you wasn't on my property cooking up illegalities, if you don't mind. I see, Bobby had responded at once. You are concerned about the chemicals? At which point the sheriff had grown noticeably more on the qui-vive, as Mifflet Shimworth convinced them of the suspicions began to back away. Bobby then proceeded to show the sheriff the chemicals in the fridge. Core, Corona, and this little IPA we picked up in Abilene. Then he showed off the JEOL scanning electron microscope. I call him Joel. It wasn't like the sheriff would recognize the difference between a palestite fragment or a bit of Symphocritium ericotyles pollen. At that scale, everything looks extraterrestrial. As I told Mifflet here, we're meteor hunters. Got all sorts of bits. And then Bobby showed off the trays of rocks. There was a large breccia by the door, plus tektites in a jar by the sink. Not technically meteors. And then, for fun, some pretty geodes in the cabinet where they kept bottles of hot sauce and cans of baked beans. And there? The sheriff asked about the bulge beneath the sweater of the rear lounge. A beaut, Bobby had grinned, and like a magician, whisked away the cashmere to reveal the orb, which with a key light he transformed into a full moon. You a witch? Mifflet still had to ask. Cass had almost answered yes. As for the antennas and sticks, as Mifflet described them, they were for getting some TV and tuning into whatever shortwave news they could on asteroid showers and other meteorological events. Sheriff Mingo Duez declined the offer of a beer, but Mifflet helped himself to 2 bottles of the IPA, on the way out wishing them good hunting. Bobby seemed energized and even pleased by the encounter, as if one close call granted him visiting rights to the close calls of his youth, and so too lent him some of youth's vitality. Cass, however, was wrecked. A migraine threatened the periphery of the hour. Enough of a threat to keep her from repowering up the orb. The call from Deacon, a little later, had helped a bit. He had gotten a good nap and was confirming dinner at the Paisano. Unfortunately, he'd also added how these days were more about more dread than facts. More dread was an old-school code that reduced to Mordred and was Merlin's way of redirecting them to parcel thoughts, where recent posts revealed the latest news. Bad news. All of it. Thanatos dead in New Haven. Thaumaturge dead in Elip. Artemis dead in Berlin. Pythia arrested in Fort Myers. Endoria arrested in Portland. Cersei missing in Cedar Rapids with 2 witnesses calling in a possible abduction. Lilith arrested in Richmond. Treebeard dead in Redwood Shores. Sybil missing. Bobby had also discovered, independent of Redacted, how back in April, dear Relic S. Tarnin was apparently tortured, cut into pieces and smeared across an intersection in downtown Los Angeles. Cass was the one who had started sending him several years ago breadcrumbs a la Cicada 3301. Out of the violet, she liked to say and do. He was an academic, not even one of their best, but he was persistent and brave, even if he had not yet been told about Recluse, Distribution, or VEM. And on top of it all, still no word from Sorcerer. Well, Count Just before him is about all Bobby can muster. His effort still seems valiant. At least on the back of his motorcycle, they managed to outrace her migraine. If only they could outrace the news, too. Not that Bobby was foolish enough to risk another encounter with the police by trying. The rain stayed off them, and the mists kept parting enough to keep the median line clear and steady, as if solid and dotted were enough to depend upon. And maybe at that moment, they were. Whatever the very nature of their history, over the years both Cass and Bobby had come to depend on Deacon. Just the thought of him drew away the pain, rooting into the cradle of her hips, prying up her shoulder blades. Deacon knew big data, understood the terrible dangers of VEM, and with the exception of Sorcerer and herself, could move the most effortlessly through the orb. Of the 5 orbs out there, he had one. Since the distribution had begun to fail, Deacon would have spent every feed moment available trying to locate a means to counter Recluse. He would have some answers, or at least have come up with viable ideas on how to find those answers. As they neared, the more the thunder groaned, not close, but as if from beyond the plains, perhaps even the high mesas. Nothing flashed or glowed on Mitchell Flat. Tonight, Bobby and Cass wore the Marfa lights. The stillness, though, warned Cass that the storm had not yet moved on. If it was a warning, who was to say a storm couldn't serve their side this time? The cool air slipping under her helmet's visor felt good, as did Bobby's back against her chest. Little Big Spoon, he sometimes called her, because she liked best holding him like this when they slept. Maybe because she wanted to dream of him driving her away, and away, like this. And Cass dreamed often, though never this dream. When 67 turned into Highland Street, Bobby downshifted. The stillness only grew. The mist did not relent. On West Texas Street, where Bobby parked, the mist finally seemed to turn to fog. There was even a moment, while standing at the entrance to Deacon's room, that Cass thought the fog must have slipped inside. Kirby must have thought the room was on fire. If it were only that simple. Not even a hint of a cigarette. But now. Bobby follows Kirby in, already opening the French doors and the bathroom window. Deacon is clearly not there. Not even a suitcase. One shirt hanging in the closet. A sock left beside the bed. Bobby takes his patch out to mark locative and temporal data. His phone keeps ringing, he says to Kirby by way of an explanation. Maybe we'll find it behind a seat cushion or headboard? As if that would explain anything. Sometimes the tone of knowing is the worst lie. Cass finds what's left in the bathtub. She sees she should have recognized the smell. Bobby should have too. The glass shards spray out from around the drain. charred oblong fragments scattered among pebbled bits, the bases of melted circuitry. At least Deacon managed to destroy his orb. On the way back, Cass doesn't even look at the speedometer. Now more than ever, shocks hold her, even as the whine of the engine, the way the air buffets them from both sides, tells her to hold on tighter. Bobby wants to get back to the orb as fast as he can. Get them out of there as fast as he can. And maybe because he had assured her will, for a moment, Cass considers abandoning the airstream, the orb, all of it. Start with the Canyon of Kings, where they had gone when arriving here. There they could disappear among the catclaw Nakatiel. Hunt javelinas, harvest wild peyote, and distill the Sirion Wheelery into Sotol. And when the moon is full, or not at all, dance upon the ring middens into melodies they can only half remember. There their bones can lie too. And if such a life lived purely and good between just two, they need not tell more. Though if resurrection ever became an option, their bones might awake to stand trial. And Cass shudders and does not tap Bobby's shoulder. There is no way in a way, only this way. Besides, Bobby would not have suffered such an escape. Upon passing their airstream, after a semi passes them with a blast, he slows along the shoulder. Bobby turns off the headlight and 67 goes dark. Then carefully he turns the motorcycle around and turns off the engine, studying their home for movement, for disturbances. Bobby knows how to think this way. He had deliberately left all the lights on inside. The lights now do not flicker. Closer, the fishing lines he strung up have stayed taut. The same is true of the guitar picks he keeps for these occasions, still wedged beneath the hinges of the front door. Stillness prevails. Only the crimson awning flutters. Though from what wind, Cass can't tell. Bobby at once gets to cinching the motorcycle to the back and packing up the generators. He will take in the lawn chairs last. This is his routine. The appearance of lingering prolonged until right before the moment of departure. One piece of news sustains their respective hustle and dampens some of their collective fear. A new post on Parcel Thoughts. Implication clear. Sorcerer has escaped all nets and will soon post possible meets. Bobby manages a half shout. It's not victory, but it's better than total defeat. Bobby even suggests she lie down while he readies their departure, but Cass doesn't even take off her braces or her red motorcycle jacket. Despite the pain returning to her palms, she powers up the orb. It's too soon for Deacon and too daunting for Recluse. Right now, though, before the antennas come down, Cass can give way to instinct and desire and maybe something more. Static, answers Hurt. Pan, Tolmaton.
All is to be dead.
Hue melts into that digital haze Cass needs no solid and dotted lines to navigate. Roads are only necessary if you're not flying. Clip number 6, the latest aberration. Cass had made the discovery earlier this year, after months and months spent teasing out curious angles which had drawn her away from old suspicions and on through new densities, always vaguely resembling continually reorganized versions of white noise. Weeks of incoherency, if never entirely without these curious fissures, logical in their own keeping, despite how what they regarded, or in what direction they resolved. Oceans of possibilities remained unknown. To what end? Cass continually wondered. Perhaps toward something incognizable?
Or a new horror?
Would she find another dead child? Until at last those slopes of light widened to a path beyond suspicion. Cass's fingers weaving tirelessly above the increasing order. Like Audra, the colors had bent toward violet. Unlike Audra, the colors weren't finally violet. A brighter blue had started to wend through everything until what threatened to become crimson abruptly brightened into spears of what Cass could only describe as pink. And candy pink, too. She'd even laughed. Even if Bobby was impressed, he still felt compelled to point out how clip number 1 afforded little benefit, except for a quasi-confirmation, albeit with no body present. Worldlike had congratulated her, acknowledging the mystery, while at the same time shrugging off its preeminence.
The lives of others are the windows beyond the keep of oneself.
Not that these parents can notice. No naked eye can see this much. Cass, though, knows every step. The whole dance of coming home, from every eddy, updraft, even every vortex. Is it the actual air that moves so? Or is it something else? Most of the time, this would be it. Enigmas beyond exploration, let alone explanation. Except Cass knows these moments occur just outside Athens.
Summer of 2008.
She even knows where they live now. She even knows their names. The orb did not tell her, nor did some dark map. All this she found out the old-fashioned way. A little bit of luck. Cass will never forget Sorcerer, still perched on the edge of that crummy bed in a Nashville Super 8, right after he'd finished watching clip number 6 for the first time. He was shocked and more than a little horrified. "You're not going to believe this," he finally said. "I know him." The father? Now it was their turn to be appalled and a little horrified by the coincidence. "He's a friend. A good friend. Or was a good friend. I've been remiss." "And his daughter?" "Xanther. Strange white skin, icy black braids. Is she even 8? Legs falling over each other like knees at war. The child should stumble. Maybe her smile keeps her up. Or streaming off her, in her wake, ahead of her too, no matter which direction she takes, whirling all around her like rainbows in soap, in oil, in all we care to imagine. Tiny storms. Clip number 6. Redacted. 1906-32, Marfa, Texas. 05-10-2014.